Alright, so it's going to be a little bit interesting to record. Now, if you played DBD within the past week, most likely you have either seen and or played on the brand new 9.2.0 PTB. And that gave us the brand new chapter Sinister Grace, where we got the new killer, new survivor, and all their new perks and stuff like that. As well as we got changes to different killers, changes to maps, and changes to game mechanics. And I want to discuss all that stuff as well, but I mainly want to make this video specifically about the killer and survivor, but I do also just want to go into all my opinions about all those changes. So, the first thing to look into is the new killer, the Krasu, or the Krasu, or Krasu. I don't really know how to pronounce that, nor have I seen anyone actually pronounce it consistently. So, the killer has the ability called Unbodied Flesh, which essentially basically just means that they can detach their head from their body and basically just become a floating head. And you basically switch between these two modes, where you can switch between body form and head form. And when you're in body form, you have a special ability called Regurgitate, where you can basically send out this little projectile ball. And if this projectile ball hits a survivor, or they get hit by the splash damage, they get hit with this killer effect called Leeched, which you kind of have to imagine it in the same way of like a plague / like nemesis thing, where they basically get infected, but then like over time, if they don't get this infection off of them, they will eventually become injured, similar to plague. Now, where this becomes a lot stronger is because if you go into head form while somebody is infected with this leeched effect, you can actually injure them in your power. And so it is kind of like a nemesis thing, where you kind of want to like infect them and then, go into head form and hit them. And, you use the intestinal wimp, which is like the special ability when you're in head form, to injure them. And when you're also in head form, you also have the ability to do the headlong flight, which is essentially just a mobility thing, kind of like a catch-up thing that you can do with them. And yeah, when it comes to a survivor getting leeched, which is like the killer effect, basically just their infection, they have two levels. The first level is where nothing really happens except the meter slowly fills up over time. And Leeched 2 is when they become broken and injured. So you either want to just infect them and then wait for the second leech to take effect and have them be injured, or you can do what, in my opinion, makes more sense, which is just to hit them with your power to hit them with the leech, switch to head form, and then injure them. Now, you can still attack in your head form, but it won't injure them. It will just simply put the leech effect on them if they don't already have it. And if you do put the leech effect on them while in head form, it only fills up about like a quarter of the way, or about like a third of the way. So you would have to hit them about like 3 times in your head form to actually be able to injure them. So you do have to kind of decide in some situations if you think it's better to go between head form or, body form, whichever, fits your play style in a certain scenario. The way I kind of see them now is I kind of see them like a catch-up killer almost, where it's like you want to infect them, switch to head form, injure them in head form, and then kind of use the headlong flight to kind of catch up to them and then hit them again. That's kind of how I see it, at least, but to each their own, obviously. As well as there is a new item with this killer called Glowing Fungus, which this item only spawns every time you switch between head and body mode. And it is essentially basically just like a vaccine. Like, servers can pick up this glowing fungus and they can eat it, which will over time get rid of their leech meter. And when I say over time, I mean it in the sense that the moment they eat it, it'll start going down. But if you hit them with your ability before it goes down all the way, it'll just reset it. So if you see that somebody eats like a glowing fungus, you kind of would want to think to yourself like, oh, I gotta go, deal with that. It's honestly not bad. I was very confused about it when I was playing this live on stream, but actually like sitting down and playing with it, I think it's fine. I think it's fine. I think the killer's fine. They're just a little complicated to understand, and especially the intestinal wimp, because the intestinal wimp has a weird like drag and like turret radius to it. So you do have to get used to that, and as well as just some other things with the killer, but that's literally every new killer. And the new killer's perks that they have are Ravenous, which with Ravenous, whenever you hook a survivor for the first time, you gain 1 token, meaning that you can get up to 4 tokens. And when you have all 4 tokens, the survivors scream and become exposed for a minute, which, like, it's kind of a mixed bag. It's like it's either it's gonna be really good for you, it's gonna be really bad for you, because I don't know if a lot of people that play DBD remember the old Grim Embrace, where the old Grim Embrace was you had to hook all 4 people before you can get the effect of blocking generators, instead of each hook blocking generators. So I'm very interested to see what this will do in live. I'm wondering if they're gonna buff it or what or not, but it doesn't seem like it's that bad. I just wasn't really able to get much value out of it when I actually did it, as well as the and yeah, it's also just very dependent on the map, because if it's a very big map or it's a very safe palette map for survivors, you know, you're not really gonna get much value out of it. But I mean, if you're running like a killer that, you know, can jump really quickly, or, you know, you're running a killer that's very strong at bloops and stuff like that, you know, the instant might be in your favor. I have no idea. But, I mean, from what I was able to use, it seemed decent. I don't know. And the next perk is Wandering Eye, which, whenever you start chasing a survivor, you can see the aura of all the other injured survivors within 16 meters of you for 5 seconds. Which, like, that's not bad. I mean, it's kind of like Nurse's Calling, except you have to be in a chase, and it's not really based on tear radius anymore. It's more based on just 16 meters. And then the perk has like a 30-second cooldown, which, like, you know, I don't know, with perks like that, and I'm like, I mean, like, I feel like the cooldown should be shorter. I kind of had this problem with Phantom Fear when FNAF was coming out. I'm like, they give you this cool idea for an aura reading perk, but then they have like a 30-second cooldown on it, and I'm like, I mean, it still seems like it'll be fine, but I don't imagine that there will be a lot of situations where you get insane, especially if you're already in a chase, and like, let's say like there's an injured survivor like on a different floor, either above or below you while you're in chase. It's not really going to do much besides just give you information, and even then the information is literally for 5 seconds, so even if you manage to get to that injured person within 5 seconds, most likely they either already healed and left, or they just already left. And if they do happen to stay there, cool, you got like the once in a lifetime that the perk actually works. But otherwise, it's a kind of mediocre perk. And then we got Hex Overture of Doom. I almost said Over Torture. Overture of Doom, which is a Hex Totem. So it actually spawns a Hex Totem, and that Hex Totem will actually curse the totem that is from the farthest generator away from it, and it actually reveals the aura of the generator in yellow. And whenever a survivor repairs the cursed generator, because this totem will curse a generator basically, and it will curse the farthest generator. And whenever a survivor repairs that generator for 5 seconds, you gain undetectable, and your tear radius is applied to that gen for 30 seconds. And whenever the gen does get completed, the next generator is cursed. The next furthest gen. I actually do like the concept of this perk, because it just means that if somebody does the furthest gen from that totem, which is good in the sense that nobody's going to find the totem instantly, but if somebody does the gen furthest from that totem, not only does your tear radius get applied to the gen, you lose your tear radius, making you undetectable, which sometimes will literally happen at the start of a game. And yeah, it's like, it's not like a one-time perk. It literally will just go to the next gen if that gen gets done. And, you know, because it's a Hex Totem, it's like, obviously it can be cleansed. But no, this is actually a decent perk. I actually did like this perk when I used it. And I could totally see some scenarios where, you know, you're just like either at the start of the game or just in an open area, you know, where you're trying to find survivors. It actually would make so much sense for you to try and sneak up to somebody, and then halfway through walking up to them, you just become undetectable randomly. The tear radius goes to a different side of the map, and like I think this perk's actually pretty good. I personally actually like this perk. And yeah, I mean, that's all 3 perks. The perks aren't bad. The perks are all not bad. Again, behavior, like, similar to the FNAF chapter, like, none of the perks are super OP, none of them are super, like, you know, underpowered, you know, they're all okay. I mean, obviously, once we actually, like, play in live games, we'll see their worth, but, you know, they're not bad for the PTB. And, now, I want to quickly talk about the new survivor, V, and she's probably one of my new favorite original survivors, honestly, in terms of design. I think she looks really cool. She kind of reminds me of, like, Yui or, like, Fang, you know, kind of mixed together as one survivor. And, like, her whole lore is that she's in, like, a band and stuff like that. It's pretty cool. I like her design, and I think she's a cool survivor. Now, her perks are actually also pretty interesting. So her first perk is called Road to Life, which whenever you're injured and you're repairing a generator, you gain 1 token for each skill check you hit. And when you have up to 6 tokens, you can spend all those tokens and get healing, and you heal faster on one person until you stop healing. And whenever you miss a skill check, you lose about 2 tokens. So essentially what it is you do a gen when you're injured, and you gain tokens. Once you have 6 tokens, you can put all those tokens into healing speed, and you can heal somebody even faster. Now, this perk would be decent if, like, at least for me, I feel like the perk would be decent if it wasn't on the first person you were healing. Because, I mean, to be fair as well, it also doesn't really specify until, it doesn't really specify if it's on healing yourself or healing other people. So if you can do it on yourself, it might actually be pretty good. But I just think it's kind of weird that it's like, it's a healing perk that's designed to only heal in the moment, and then once you're done healing, it deactivates. I don't see the worth in that, personally. It's just something that I would have to experiment with. Like, I'd have to experiment with, like, healing builds with. It seems like it has a cool concept. I just don't really understand why it only works on the one time you're healing and then it goes away. Like, that just really doesn't make sense to me. But other than that, it seems like a decent perk. Now, the next perk is called 1234. It's called 1234. And the way this perk works is when you're standing still, you can actually press a button that will activate the performance interaction, which is essentially the same thing as Bardic Inspiration. Bardic Inspiration, like, if you've used Bardic Inspiration, is essentially the same thing, and except the only difference being is that you have to hit continuous skill checks while you're performing. And it does this goofy ass animation where V, she has like a little tambourine and she's kind of like pressing it with her hands and kind of making a beat or whatever. It's very goofy. It's literally like the same thing as Bardic Inspiration. And the thing is that if you manage to complete it and hit all the skill checks and stuff like that, the effect will last for 90 seconds. And not only that, but it'll just increase the amount of skill checks that you actually get by 20%. And I actually really like this perk because I can already tell that this is going to be one of my favorite generator perks, because we all have those moments where if you like running generator perks as Survivor, we all have those moments where skill checks will just simply not spawn. Like, you just will not get any skill checks when doing a gen. So this perk might actually be pretty fucking decent if you're running it with a good thing, especially with Bardic Inspiration and, you know, some other gen perks. I'm not really going to go too much into it. That's something that you guys would have to test. But I can already think of a build, my personal gen build that I use that would actually work with this. So actually, as much of a goofy perk as it is like Bardic Inspiration, I actually like the idea of it. And then the last perk is called Ghost Notes, which is kind of an interesting perk. It's basically whenever you're exhausted, your scratch marks disappear 50% faster, and you recover 10% faster from exhaustion, which is crazy to me because it's like, okay, so we already have had perks in the game, which like lightweight and stuff like that, which are designed around making your scratch marks disappear faster. And now, and you also just get like a mini vigil bundled in with this perk to get your exhaustion back faster, which is like actually just kind of crazy to me because it's just like, that just means like people that love using like sprint burst or, you know, dramaturgy or lithe, like people that love using this stuff in chase, they're gonna be able to use it so much more if they know how to use it, especially if you pair this up with vigil. I can imagine that this is disgustingly like strong with vigil, but I don't know. I think it definitely has its worth if you're one of those people that like you don't really want to be chased as much, like you kind of want to like have the killer lose you and chase a lot more. This might actually be a pretty decent pick because, you know, like I said, your scratch marks will disappear 50% faster, and you get exhaustion back faster, so you can like get your sprint burst back faster to run off, and then your scratch marks disappear, so the killer doesn't really find you. Overall, this new Survivors perks are also pretty good. Actually, I really like them. And you know, just looking at the ability of the killer, the survivor, and stuff like that, I think this chapter has some pretty good chance of actually being a success, because the last original chapter we got before this was Houndmaster, and you know, I've already made a video about my opinions on Houndmaster, and even looking at her now, she's still just so unbelievably below average. Like, she's just not really that great. But this new chapter has some pretty decent chances of actually being pretty good, with like the new killer, survivor, and all the perks and stuff like that. Like, I don't know, I'm pretty excited for it. And yeah, no, like if this was where I was just gonna end the video here, I would say, yeah, this chapter has some pretty good chances of making it to the game, and I feel like people might actually enjoy it. Fortunately, or unfortunately, there's a lot more stuff that we have to talk about. And the first thing I want to talk about is the other major thing that was coming to this PTB that's coming to live, and it is the killer rework for Michael Myers, also known as the Shape in-game. Now, Michael Myers in this game to me means a lot to me. I love Michael Myers as a killer. I love him just as a character, and you know, I'm very excited for the Halloween game that's also coming out. So when I first saw this rework, I was losing my shit, because I knew that they announced this, and I didn't think they were going to drop it so soon. I thought we were going to have to wait until like next year to get the rework, because that's when they were pushing all the other reworks as well. So I was very shocked to see that we were getting the rework so soon. And basically, let me just kind of break down how the new Myers rework actually functions. So the way Myers actually functions now with his rework is that he has two different modes. He has Stalker mode and Pursuer mode. Stalker mode is essentially tier 1, where like when you start the game. So when you're in tier 1, you're undetectable, you move slightly slower, but you also have the ability to stalk people. And not only can you stalk people, but you can, one of the benefits that they actually gave to tier 1 is that you have a normal lunge finally. But yeah, you can stalk people whenever you're in stalker mode. Survivors have unlimited stalk now, which is like kind of crazy to me. I don't know if anyone else realizes that. Like, I get it. Having a limited stalk on people is annoying, because it just means like towards the end of the game your power is useless. But it was just kind of crazy to me that survivors have unlimited stalk. But yeah, essentially, so Stalker mode is just tier 1. You can stalk people, you're slightly slower, and you know, stuff like that. Pursuer mode is basically just tier 2 Myers. You have a normal 24-meter tear radius, you have normal movement speed, but they also gave tier 2 the benefit, or Pursuer mode, they gave Pursuer mode the benefit of having the increased vault speed. And they also increased like the lunge range, the braking speed, and the stun recovery speed in Pursuer mode. So basically, Pursuer mode really does have a lot more benefits in chase, instead of just kind of being a standard M1 killer. Because yeah, you have like, you know, the faster vault speed, but also just lunge range is further, braking speed is faster, and stun recovery is faster. It's only by 10%, so it's not like a major thing, but it's just enough to really, you know, like, you have a reason to switch between Stalker and Pursuer mode. And then finally, when you're in Stalker mode and you stalk people up to a certain amount, which I believe it takes about 6 seconds to get a full stalk, you can actually build up the stock meter all the way, and then when you fill up your stock meter all the way, you automatically get put into Pursuer mode, and Stalker mode becomes unavailable. And the reason for that is that because you have the ability to activate Evil Incarnate mode, which Evil Incarnate mode is basically just tier 3. So when you activate Evil Incarnate mode, it's a 40-second ability. Your tear radius gets bigger, you know, your vault speed gets even faster. And one of the benefits for that is you have the ability to kill survivors when they're on death hook. Meaning, if you down somebody when they're on death hook and then activate Evil Incarnate mode, you could just kill them on the spot. It's definitely a lot more fair than Tombstone, but it also just has that situation where if someone's on death hook and he's in Evil Incarnate mode, you can't save them. You just can't, unless you have like 4 other people or something. You can't save them, because he's just going to pick them up straight away, or he's just going to kill them straight away. And when you're in Evil Incarnate mode, you have the special attack Slaughtering Strike. And this is the thing that the entire community was like losing their shit about. So with Slaughtering Strike, you have the ability to hold down right click or whatever your power button is to charge up a lunge. And essentially what it is like, you know, Myers by default in tier 3 had a longer lunge. This basically gives him a even longer lunge than current tier 3 and kind of turns him into a bit of a dash killer, almost similar to like Chunky or Demogorgon, where you charge up your thing and you do slow down when you're charging it up, but you can literally you speed up to them and you just have this insanely long lunge, and when you hit somebody with this lunge they instantly go down, which yeah, that's the other thing to keep in mind as well. When you're in Evil Incarnate mode, standard M1s just count as regular attacks. They don't insta-down anymore. So if you want to insta-down in Evil Incarnate mode, you have to use Slaughtering Strike. And, you know, this has been a very, you know, a lot of people have been very, you know, not happy with this change. And it may come as a shock to some people, but to me personally, I'm a big fan of this. Like, obviously, I think there's some things that need to be tweaked and some things that need to be, you know, kind of worked out. But just the ability to stock somebody up for 6 seconds, like, pop your Evil Incarnate, and then when you're at, like, a loop, the amount of mind game potential that you can have, because it's basically like a better way to describe it is like a pig dash, almost. So having the ability to pig dash and kind of mind game around by charging it up all the way, because you don't even have to charge it up all the way. If you want to do just like a smaller but still increased lunge, you can just hold it for like a little bit. Like, you don't have to hold it all the way. So, I don't know. I personally see the fun in this because I've always been a big chase guy in DBD. Like, playing a skiller, I love going for chases more than dealing with generators. Playing a survivor, I love just going into chases more than actually playing the video game. Which, you know, call me what kind of type of player you will. I just find that to be more fun than, you know, worrying about generators all game or, you know, worrying about this and that. So, and, you know, on top of all those changes, you know, they changed like a bunch of his add-ons and stuff like that. Like, they had to rework a bunch of them to make sense with his power now. Both of the tombstones don't insta-kill anymore. And actually, Fragrant Tuft of Hair, which is like one of his eerie add-ons, actually basically reverts him to his current version in DBD, where when you level up Evil Incarnate mode, survivors become exposed, your lunge range is increased, and you don't have Slaughtering Strike. So if you really just want to use old school Myers, you have the option. But other than that, and some of the other like add-ons and stuff they changed, I'm kind of a big fan of Michael Myers' new changes. I know, like I said, I know a lot of people are very upset about it, and a lot of people aren't really like huge fans of it. And, you know, some people are saying that this is going to kill Myers, or Myers is going to be way too boring or too OP. Like, people are saying he's just dash slop killer, which, like, I get all those points, but at the same time, I don't know. I just think it's more fun to deal with than just dealing with a Myers stalking you from across the map, coming up to you, and then just insta-downing or insta-killing you if he has Tombstone. Like, I just find this Myers so much more engaging because they actually have to try to use their ability to, you know, they have to try and stalk you, get Slaughtering Strike up, and, you know, do all this crazy shit. Like, I think that's just a lot more fun to deal with. And like I said, I think they just have to kind of work some things out, like fix it, like maybe change some numbers here and there, you know, fix some issues that it might have. And, you know, it's not like it's going to completely, you know, change the way people play Myers, because even with Slaughtering Strike, you can still do the same playstyle of charging it up just a little bit to get that lunge, and then just, you know, back-rebbing somebody and just insta-downing them. Like, you can still play like that if you want to. Like, I'm not saying, like, it's impossible, but I just think Myers is going to be a lot more fun to deal with in chase rather than, you know, just, like, he stalks you from across the map and then insta-kills you when he gets too close. That's just how I see it. Obviously, like, if I really wanted to, I could go into a lot more of a deeper discussion about it. But, you know, I just want to give that opinion saying I think new Myers is actually going to be pretty damn fun if they actually work it properly. Now the next small thing I kind of want to real quickly get into that I didn't even really remember that they were changing until I actually reread the patch notes is the palette density that they're increasing, which essentially means that because we all have had those experiences on Dead by Daylight where we're playing Survivor, we're looping, and then we end up running into a dead zone where there is just nothing, like there's no like line of sight blockers, there's like, you know, barely anything to loop on, like there's no windows palettes or anything. It's literally just jack shit in the corner of the map. Well, Behavior actually came out and said that they were going to be changing the way palette density works on a lot of the maps. It is like a big list of maps. It's mostly like the originals like Macmillan, Autohaven, Coldwind, Crotus Pen, but they're even changing stuff like Haddonfield, Backwater, Red Forest, the Yabaoka Estate, Ormond, and Borgo, because those were some of the maps that had some of the major issues when it came to dead zones, and they were actually changing them. Like there's going to be a lot more palettes, a lot more tiles, a lot more unique tiles to these maps. You know, they're carrying over some tiles from other maps into some of these new ones, and it's been kind of split, honestly. When I was playing the PTB the other day, I didn't really notice much of a difference. Like, I might have just, like in the back of my mind, I might have just thought, like, oh, there's quite a lot, like, there's a couple more palettes than usual, but I didn't really think much of it. But apparently, according to a lot of people, it is actually a lot more of a major issue. And there is a lot of maps that just have, like 4 interconnected palettes together, and all of them are insanely strong. Which, like, yeah, that's just kind of something that, like I said, they just kind of have to work it out. They just have to fix it, and I'm sure it'll be fine. I didn't really notice much of a difference, and I didn't even know that this was really something that they were doing. Alright, and now I want to talk about the last thing that is one of the most major things that they were going to be adding to the live game, and that was the tunneling and the slugging reduction. And this was something we have wanted in the game for almost 10 years now. Is the biggest problem that DBD has always had was the constant use of tunneling or slugging people to get a win. And you know, I have my opinions about it, and I'll probably explain it in a bit, but I kind of just want to real quickly go over these changes, because these changes were going to be like massive effects on the game. So let's first look at the slugging one, since it is a bit smaller than the tunneling changes. So whenever you're slugged on the ground, essentially, basically the way it was going to work was that if you get slugged on the ground for 90 seconds, you basically will if you recover yourself within 90 seconds, you have the ability to just pick yourself up after recovering. And you basically, it's literally just, you can just recover yourself after 90 seconds, which, like, is basically just a base kit unbreakable. And a lot of the other things that were changed about it as well was, like, you can now crawl and recover at the same time, basically just having tenacity base kit. You don't need to even hold the button to recover while crawling, meaning that it does it automatically, which means after waiting 90 seconds, you can automatically pick yourself back up. You do also crawl faster, and if you get downed again after getting picked up, you have the option to just abandon, which is basically just them saying, okay, you picked yourself up, but the killer's still refusing to pick you up, he's still slugging you, you could just leave the game. This is a mixed bag, and I'm personally on the end of, I'm not really a huge fan of this. I do like certain aspects of it. Like, I do like some of the aspects, like you can crawl and recover at the same time. I do like the idea of just being able to straight up just pick yourself back up, you know, because that's literally just like the easiest way of fixing it. Or even just like, you know, the idea of like, you can, you know, if you go down after picking yourself up, you have the option to abandon, because like I said, it's literally just the game saying like, okay, killer still will not pick you up, you could just leave the game if you want, no big deal. Now, And they were also going to change perks like Plot Twist, Deer Stalker, Nurse's Calling, Tenacity, Mither. They were going to change all these perks to, to work with this new change. But the idea of having a automatic 90-second pickup is not really the greatest, because, there's also just a lot of ways to kind of exploit that, because, you have stuff like Plot Twist and stuff, or like, let's say the killer like downs you, but then they go to like kick a generator nearby. If you manage to crawl away for a set amount of time, you literally just have to wait 90 seconds and then you're up off the ground. And even if the killer's not intentionally slugging you, that's kind of where the problem is, that if the killer's not intentionally slugging you, you can still take full advantage of picking yourself up after 90 seconds. And, it takes like 3 minutes to bleed out anyways. So if you get downed again, you're not going to be able to pick yourself up again, because you're just going to bleed out on the ground. So it's like, or like if a teammate picks you up before you pick yourself up, and you've already lost like a quarter of your bar, it's like you're not going to have as much, like you're going to die faster on the ground essentially. So just like, I feel like there just wasn't a lot considered when they were looking at this. They kind of just were like, okay, let's just put Unbreakable base kit. Let's just, let them automatically pick themselves up. Let them crawl while recovering. Like, just let them do all these things. So that way they could just pick themselves off the ground, the killer slugging. But I feel like what they also just didn't really consider is the amount of ways that people can either A, abuse this, or B, accidentally get value out of this. Because, like I said, like there's a lot of situations where the killer might not intentionally slug, but survivors might be able to crawl away before the killer could come back. And now the survivor just picks himself up for free. So it's like there wasn't really a way to tell exactly like when it's considered slugging or not. There's a lot of different ways that they could have went about this, and I feel like the way they went about this wasn't bad per se, but I think they had to just they had to look at all the possible situations that it would be considered slugging and then actually work on it. Because it seems like the way they're thinking about it is just like, yeah, if the killer leaves you on the ground, it just automatically starts working. Despite the fact that, sometimes, like I said, sometimes, you might down somebody, and then somebody might be there for a save, or like a flashlight save or a pallet save, so you want to get them away from you. Or, there's situations where people are running builds where they want to get slugged on a pallet to get value out of their perks. It's like the killer's not really slugging per se, but they kind of have to because of, the people around them. But because of that, survivors are practically just abusing the slugging reduction update. So I just feel like they kind of have to reconsider a lot of these things before, they feel like they just have to think more about how the community plays the game per se, and how certain scenarios aren't really considered slugging, but survivors might try to abuse it by slugging themselves. I don't know. It wasn't the worst change out there, but it was definitely something that I think they just had to work on it essentially. And then the big one, the real big one, is the tunneling reduction update. This was something that we wanted. This was honestly we kind of wanted this more than we wanted the slugging reduction. We wanted both obviously, but tunneling was a big part of the game, because when you look at some of the sweatier, the competitive players, it's a lot of them will argue that tunneling is the way to play the game. You tunnel one person out, and then you just split pressure until everyone's dead. And I like I said, I mostly saw this with the really competitive players, or the people that have big win streaks, and they want to keep their win streak alive, so they're like, oh, I have to tunnel. It's very weird for me, because I don't like tunneling as a survivor, and I really don't like tunneling as a killer. I've always just said it, but my whole counter argument to tunneling is just go for somebody else. And I know there's a lot of people that'll argue against that, saying oh, you can't. What if you can't go for this person? What if this person's good at the game? What if these people are running certain builds that make it harder to chase them? That's how you learn. That's how you learn how to play this game. The way I see it is that it doesn't matter whether you win or lose. If you learn how to play against something, then the next time someone does it, you can play against it with better knowledge. So it's Why are we acting like tunneling is like the one way to get a win in this game sometimes, when it literally just boils down to learn how to deal with certain parts of looping, learn how to go against better players, and just go for other people. Like, to me, it's just simple as that. But so the way that they're basically adding, so one of the main things they're doing to prevent the tunneling changes is, so a lot of us know now that whenever you unhook somebody, you have a base kit borrow time, or you have the base kit endurance effect, and you have a 10% haste. Now they're actually adding they were gonna add a new effect for Survivor called the elusive effect, which hides your grunts of pain, your aura, your scratch marks, and your blood. And you know, it's not like a bad thing, you know, like it's literally just like a new status effect that's designed around stopping killers from finding you the moment you get unhooked, because most of the time what will happen is that somebody will unhook you and that survivor will try to split up, but because the killer can like find your scratch, or you and the survivor will try to split up, but because the killer can see your blood or scratch marks, they'll instantly go for you because they know where you're going. So not bad, honestly, not bad. The other change that they were gonna add was that they were gonna have no collision with survivors, which, like, also okay, that's not bad. Because it kind of just meant that, like, if a killer managed to trap you in a corner after you get unhooked, or, like, basically the killer can't body block you after you get unhooked, so that way they can, like, wait out your BT, or wait out, you know, anything else you might have. Like, if you get unhooked, you were able to just run straight through the killer, just run away. And then you were also able to see the killer's aura within 32 meters. Fine, we have perks that already do that in the game, so it's like, whatever. You don't have killer instinct anymore, which, like, I'm kind of iffy on that, because killer instinct is a thing killer instinct's like a weird mechanic in this game, because it's like it either works or it just doesn't. Like, there's some killers that benefit off of it, like Legion, for example, but there's also some killers that, like, it just doesn't really make sense for this to take effect on. Like, one of the big ones that I remember seeing was people were talking about, like, Pinhead, and how if somebody gets unhooked and then does Pinhead's box, you can't see the killer instinct anymore on Pinhead if the person that gets unhooked does the box. So I don't know, killer instinct's always just been a weird thing in this game, because it's like some killers have it, some killers don't, and then some killers have practical use for it, some of them don't. So I don't know, it was kind of like a mixed bag. It's like either there were some killers that were like getting fucked over because of it, or some killers just weren't really being affected by it at all, like, you know, like Dredge, or, you know, stuff like that. And the next thing that they were going to change was the immunity to AFK crows, which basically means, like, if you get unhooked and then you hide somewhere for a long period of time, you're not going to get AFK crows for the time that you're, you know, in that, like, state. Which, you know, it's fine. It just means that, like, you know, it's easier to hide from the killer, and it's only based on you, since you're the one that just got unhooked recently. And yeah, no, it's not bad. And the effect was gonna linger for 3 seconds after being healed fully. And you know, same thing as normal, where it's like the effect is lost from performing conspicuous actions and all this other, you know, all the other stuff like that. But yeah, like, I mean, that first set of changes right there wasn't too bad. And, like, even if you play from, like, the killer POV, like, some of the changes that were happening for killer was, you can actually see the hook status of it, or you can actually see the tallies of, like, how many times you've hooked people over the course of the match. But when a survivor is hooked, like, the person that you have actively put on the hook, it actually blocks out their icon. Like, you can't see their hook status, you can't see how long they've been on hook for, as well as you can't see the aura of people who have been hooked anymore. You just can't see it anymore. There's no notification noise for whenever somebody does get unhooked, and you have to wait 10 seconds before you can actually see the status of that person on hook after they get unhooked. And, you know, like, it's fine. Like, it's just so that way the killer can't constantly just, I mean, to be fair, most of the time too, what will happen is, like, a killer will just straight up camp next to the hook. But, like, still, like, it wasn't bad, because it was just trying to, you know, make it so that way if it's, like, let's say a blight or a Kaneki or somebody with like a huge like dash ability to just go right back to the hook after you get unhooked, they're not going to know where you are. They're just not. So, you know, it's not like those changes alone weren't bad. It's when we start getting into everything else that starts kind of becoming a bit of a problem. So they had two different things. They had bonuses for whenever you hook people on hook, and then they had penalties for tunneling people off of hook. So let's look at the bonuses first. So they have these unique hook abilities, and when you hook a survivor that is different from the last person you hooked, so basically meaning you hook one person and then hook a different person before you go back to that other survivor, you actually gain bonuses. Like, for instance, you have a 20% bonus to damaging generators, which basically means that if you kick a gen, you basically have like Pop Goes the Weasel for hooking two different people. You do get a 15-second haste. That is, like, you get a 10% haste for 15 seconds. Which, again, you know, it's kind of like a little benefit for, you know, not tunneling somebody out. But if you break a pallet or damage a generator, or damage a survivor, it removes this bonus. And if you actually, it also will reveal all the survivors outside of 40 meters that have less than one hook state. So kind of like what 2v8 did, where in 2v8, if you didn't get caged once during the entire match, your aura will be shown every time like a gen got done or every time someone got hooked. It's basically like that. It was basically going to be like that, where essentially if you hooked one person, you could see the people that that have less than one hook stage from the furthest away from you. And you know, the thing can only be gained when the killer performs the hook action themselves, meaning if it's like a pyramid head or, you know, some kind of like killer that can send people to different types of hooks remotely without manually doing it, they wouldn't get this effect. And they actually have it listed here that there was a lot of killers that, you know, that had to be specifically designed around these bonuses, like Blight, Dracula, Ghoul, Billy, the new killer, and Nurse. And all of these killers will get 10% bonus to the next generator action, 5% haste for 10 seconds, and, you know, the same aura reveal mumbo jumbo, which, like, is fine, especially like the haste stuff. I kind of get it because these killers have their own like dash abilities anyways, but like decreasing the amount of gem progress they can damage by kicking gens, like I don't know, that's kind of weird to me. That, like, you know, some of the, like, I kind of get it because, like, you know, these killers could speed to a gen that has the most progress and then kick it really easily. But, like, I don't know. It's just weird. And, like, it's also just weird in general that they had to specifically pick killers and be like, okay, these ones are going to have different changes from literally everybody else. I am never a fucking fan of whenever they do stuff like that. Like, I know my friend Gage was, like, telling me how he's a fan of them, but I'm, like, I still just don't like the idea of certain killers getting penalized while other killers don't get penalized. I'm like, it's just kind of iffy depending on the change. But yeah, that's basically all the bonus stuff. So when we're looking at the tunneling penalties, this is where a lot of the major problems would happen. So one of the major penalties that would happen if you tunneled somebody is when a survivor dies to a hook action or a mori before 6 total hook states are in the game, the remaining survivors gain a 25% repair speed bonus. And when a survivor who was previously killed and when a survivor that was previously hooked is killed or sacrificed, the killer loses the ability to block damage or regress generators by any means. Basically meaning that if you hook somebody, or if you get less than 6 hook states, and I'm talking about just the general hook states, like if you like just hook everybody, like if you don't hook up to 6 people, then if somebody dies before you get up to 6 total hooks, not only do the survivors just repair gens faster, but you just can't, like, any generator perks that you brought just don't work anymore. You can't kick gens, you can't block gen, you can't do anything with generators if somebody dies before you get 6 total hooks. And that also includes, like, you know, the Mori system and stuff like that. And this is actually, like, this was a really, really bad, because there's some killers that are literally designed around killing survivors, like, really quickly. Like, you know, we have, like, you know, like the pig who has her bear traps, or Sadako, you know, who can, like, kill people through TVs and stuff like that. And I remember me and my friend Gage, we actually went and tested, like, the pig stuff and the Sadako stuff. Pig is actually, like, fucked in that sense. Like, pig actually, like, cannot, like, if someone dies, you know, pig actually has to deal with these penalties, and Sadako only has to deal with the generator repair speed, but she can still kick generators and stuff. So it's like, they kind of did, like, go through and think about it, but at the same time, it's like, what the fuck, behavior? Like, this makes no sense. Like, you shouldn't have to get 6 hook states, especially since, like, you know, like, you have to go through, and then you have to start, and then it's like, the whole point of the tunneling thing is to stop paying attention to who you've been hooking. But then I have to start paying attention to who I've been hooking to make sure that I get 6 hooks before somebody dies, or otherwise I'm not gonna be able to do anything for the rest of the fucking game. Like, it was such a stupid fucking change on their part. And the fact that it's like, again, like, some killers would get more affected by this than others, when it's like, it just feels like, again, they didn't think about it. They didn't think about any of these changes before they actually went ahead and put this out. Now, I will say, though, like, for my playstyle of how I play killer, this didn't affect me at all. When I was playing the PTB and I was playing, like, the new killer, or I was playing Myers, with how I play this game, you know, it didn't really affect me. And I'm willing to admit that my argument of just going for somebody else kind of gets fucked over when this penalty is in the game, because the amount of chances that people can literally exploit this to just fuck over the killer and say, no, you can't kick gens, you can't do anything anymore. Like, it's just crazy to me that, you know, that this is a penalty, that survivors repair gens faster and the killer can't do anything. Like, if it was just, like, survivors repair the gens faster, but, like, the killer can still kind of kick, or even if they, like, disable the killer's gen perks, but you could still kick generators, it'd be a different story. But no, the killer just straight up loses any ability to interact with generators in any way, and survivors just repair gens faster. So, like, I don't know, that would have just been really, really fucking bad for the game. Because, yeah, no, like I said, like, the amount of ways that people could exploit this, or the amount of killers that would accidentally deal with this penalty because, you know, that's just how their power works. Like, everyone was saying, like, Sadako was dead, or, like, me and Gage were saying, like, Pig was gonna get fucked over because of this. And it's true. They are gonna get, they would have gotten fucked over because of this. And, you know, the reason I keep saying, like, oh, they would have, or, you know, this would have been a problem for the game, is at the time of me recording this, they have literally just announced, saying that these changes are not coming to the game. Everything else that has been listed, like the killer changes, the perk changes, and like all these other like little small changes, no, they're all still coming to the game. But the tunneling and the slugging prevention stuff is not coming to the game, which is a good thing. I will admit, it's a good thing. But this also just kind of goes back to, like, this problem I've always had with behavior for a long-ass time, where it's like, we wait so long for, like, a lot of these changes to come to the game. And then they give us these changes, and it's like, it's so bad that they just either, like, hold back on it for a while, or they just straight up stop working on it. Like, you know, when they were bringing the finisher Mori system to the game, that's like one good example people can think of, is, you know, when the finisher Mori was coming to the game, you know, they had to go back on it because people didn't like it. And eventually we did get the finisher Mori system in the game. But the main difference with that is that the finisher Mori was not really something people wanted. That was just kind of something they wanted to add, because people were complaining about, like, not being able to Mori people without a Mori and stuff like that. This is literally stopping people from tunneling and slugging. And it is designed so like, it's just so fucked. Like, so much of this is just so fucked to me. Or, like, you know, like, when they were gonna first rework the twins, and it turned out that twins was stronger than Nurse was. Like that stuff, like, and then instead of trying to go back on it, they just said that they weren't gonna deal with it. That twins was just gonna be the exact same. Like, they just weren't gonna touch her. Like, it's so crazy to me how behavior will constantly do this, where they will try and change something that we've wanted for a really long time. But it just feels like they don't actually look at their player base. They don't look at how people are playing this game. They just look at the general stats of, like, okay, how often are people getting slugged? How often are people getting tunneled off hook? They're not looking into the very, very specific aspects of it. Of, like, the people that automatically give themselves up to die. Or, you know, the people that are running builds to, you know, put themselves on the ground to slug themselves. It just feels like behavior's not looking at these things. And they're just looking at the general stats of, okay, how long are people being left on the ground for? How often are people getting tunneled off a hook? And they're just kind of going off of that and making these changes. Which, like, I get it. It's, like, I get it. It's hard. It is hard for them to have to go through and look at each individual perk or each individual game mechanic to try and figure out, like, you know, the proper way to add this into the game. But if you're going to make us wait almost 10 years for a tunneling and slugging reduction, or to, you know, just a prevention of it, I wouldn't mind if you did that, because we're already waiting this long for it, and you're giving us this where it was so bad that they just straight up said they're pushing it to next year because they fucked up. They just fucked up here. So in the next patch that we're getting, 9.2.0, when that drops on September 23rd, all we're getting is the new killer in Survivor, the Myers rework, the palette density update, and then all the little changes to, like, different perks and add-ons for other killers and shit like that. And, like, man, like, this was a really rough PTB to deal with, man. Like, people fucking hated this PTB for a lot of these changes, and I did too. I did agree, like, that a lot of these things were bad. And, you know, I mean, I still think that they could, like, I still think that some of these changes could have went to live if they just changed some of the numbers and stuff. But, like, no, they're just stopping the tunneling and slugging and just fucking saying, yep, we're gonna work on it later down the line. Which, like, is just crazy to me, because it's like they have so much shit planned for the end of this year and starting next year with the next big stuff that's coming out. So it's like, and they already had to announce how they were having to delay a lot of their major changes they were putting in the game because of certain things that they were already doing. So it's like next year is going to be I feel like next year is just going to be a very chaotic year for Dead by Daylight in terms of, like, changes and updates and stuff like that, because it's just like, it's just going to be fucking chaotic to deal with, because we're going to have to be dealing with all of these changes. And, you know, some of them are going to be good, some of them are going to be bad. A lot of people are saying that this is where DBD meets its end, or, like, Dead by Daylight's going to die. I don't think it is, especially since they're, you know, holding back on these changes on the slugging and tunneling. They're holding back on it. But, dude, because of how much they've been having to delay, next year is going to be a really wild year for this game, I think. Like, there's going to be just a lot happening. And to say whether it's going to be good or not, I don't know. That's just something we have to experiment with. But yeah, I mean, sorry that this was a bit of a longer video. I really wanted to get my opinion out on all of this stuff. Like, I was initially just going to make it on the killer and Survivor, but and like the Myers rework, but then I saw everything else that was happening, and I just felt like I needed to talk about all this stuff. But yeah, no, like this is definitely a very weird point in the game, especially after we've already gotten, like, FNAF and, you know, The Walking Dead, which The Walking Dead was, like, one of the most broken fucking things imaginable when it came out. So I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see what happens. So I'm just gonna leave it here. Overall, the new killer and Survivor are actually pretty cool. I like their perks. I am personally a big fan of the Myers changes. The palette density stuff needs a little bit of work, but it's, like, fucking whatever. It's just map changes. And then the tunneling and reduction systems were actually fucking bogus. So that's where I'll leave it. If you want to check out, you know, all my other DBD content that I have, you know, and, you know, check out some of my DBD streams whenever I'm live, or just look at the VODs, it's all up on my channel. I know I do take these like kind of small breaks every couple weeks, but it's mostly just because I'm like, there's so much stuff to talk about that like I like start recording to talk about it, and by the time I like go to actually edit it, it becomes old news. So there's no real point to talking about it. But I don't know. I do have more review stuff coming too. I've been working on a lot of stuff. So yeah, I appreciate everyone stopping by, watching this video, and yeah. So all right, I'll see you guys in the next one.